Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we got a nice 10-game NFL slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It helps the channel a lot. Also, will note that I will start doing NBA on Tuesday. That is the first day of the season, so be ready for that. Let's go ahead and get in this slate, though. We have a pretty interesting one here. Some of the teams that we typically like to target are in the late games or played already this week. So we have kind of an odd slate from that perspective. Not a lot of guys that we typically utilize, but it's still going to be an interesting slate. And I think that actually opened up a lot of value on the slate. So that's nice. We have some good options on this one. So first, let's look at our quarterbacks. We're going to be looking at Geno Smith for Seattle against Atlanta. He's got a very favorable matchup here. He's been pretty solid so far in this season. He's had some 20 fantasy point games or better, and I expect him to do that here against a decent defense, but not a great one. And I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity here to have a big game. He's also been rushing the ball pretty well in several of the games, especially against the weaker rush defenses. And I think that's definitely going to be a benefit to him today. So he's definitely looking solid from that perspective. Jaden Daniels, he's the most expensive option on this slate, but he's got a very favorable matchup with Carolina. He's had some phenomenal games, and he has that good potential today, but he's pretty expensive, and I think you can save money, but he is definitely worth a look if you can afford to put him in there. The ownership at this position: Jaden Daniels, Geno Smith, and Sam Donald. Sam Donald is kind of a sneaky play for Minnesota against a weaker Detroit defense, so definitely interesting there. Looking at the running backs, Chuba Hubbard is my favorite play at this position. He's got a fantastic matchup against Washington, and he's going to have some really good potential today. He's been over 10 fantasy points in all but the first game of the season, and he should be able to get over 100 yards and score a touchdown or so. I think he's got that potential today, and he also looks like he's getting enough targets in the air to get some yards as well. But I also like Kyrene Williams, who's pretty expensive today, but he's in a very favorable matchup. He definitely has a high ceiling, but his floor has been a little bit inconsistent. But I do think he's in a good spot here against a weak defensive against the run, at least with the uh, Las Vegas team. We also like Bijan Robinson. Robinson has where'd he go? Sorry, for Atlanta. He's got a favorable matchup in Seattle. I do think this game is going to be somewhat high scoring, so I look for him to have a lot of opportunity here to get some touchdowns. And even though he's been a little bit more inconsistent than Kyrene, he's got some really good potential on this slate. Tony Pollard also in play today at this position for Tennessee. Uh, Tennessee's been struggling. The Bills' defense does look pretty solid against the pass, but they've been struggling against the run, and he has some upside here if he can score a touchdown or even get one through the air. The ownership at this position: Chuba Hubbard, Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Kyrene Williams, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Jones. Looking at wide receivers, we do like Drake London a lot. He's probably my favorite play at this position. Very close to being a core play. His ceiling is pretty high too, as he's getting a lot of targets lately. And even though it's a tougher pass defense, I think he's got a lot of utility here against this team, so he's definitely worth a look. I also like Justin Jefferson, though he is expensive today. He definitely draws really good opportunity here against a very weak pass defense, and I look for him to have a monster game, though he's going to be hard to roster as a result. Malik Neighbors, meanwhile, for the Giants, he's been pretty good the last couple weeks. He's played and he has some good potential today. I think he has uh, really good upside on the slate, and he's back from injury. I also think Juju Smith-Schuster, who is questionable but likely to play, is available here. Where'd he go? He's $4,000. Sorry. He's a cheap option that you can utilize today for Kansas City. I look for Kansas City to get to him. Like I said, he's been hurt and he has missed several games, but he's going to have a lot of potential today. He is expected to play, so he's definitely a high scoring potential guy that start cheap. Amon-Ra St. Brown is just a very good staple for fantasy, though he is very expensive. He's definitely a contrarian play off of Justin Jefferson. I do feel like he's a little bit safer, but he's definitely got just as much upside. Terry McLaurin for Seattle. Uh, I'm sorry, for Washington, not Seattle. Against Carolina today, has some fairly good potential. He's had some good games so far this season. His favorable matchup here. I think Washington's a sneaky team to go against, especially if you use Jaden McDaniels and try to get McLaren in there. DK Metcalf for Seattle, meanwhile, also in play. He has some really good upside here, and if you use Geno Smith, then you might want to try to fit him in, as he's going to have a lot of potential here. We also like Deontay Johnson for Carolina, who's been pretty good so far this season, and he's got a favorable matchup here. He has been gimpy as well, but he's been gimpy the last 3 weeks, and he's been fantasy wise pretty solid. So I look for him to be another good option today with him. Even though he's questionable, he is likely to play. Make sure to check up on that before you use either of those dudes that are questionable today. Let's look at our tight ends. So uh, Brock Bowers is coming off the page as the top overall play at this position. He's got a very favorable matchup against the Rams, who struggle against tight ends, and I look for him to have a really good opportunity to have another big game here. He started the season with some really solid games. He had a couple games where he didn't get many targets, but the last 2 games he's got a ton of targets, and I look for that to continue here, and so I like him a lot. Kobe Parkinson, meanwhile, is a cheap play here at $3,800, who can also fit in uh, at tight end or the flex spot, as he had a really good week last week against Green Bay. I look for him to get more and more touches, especially in a tougher defensive situation. As he's getting a lot of targets, he's got to ring them in, and then hopefully he can get a touchdown somewhere. He's dirt cheap though, and he can help you pay up at other positions. Looking at our defense, or looking at our ownership at this position though, Kobe Parkinson, Travis Kelsey, Brock Bowers, and Kyle Pitts. Kelsey is an interesting play and a good contrarian away from Brock Bowers. Looking at our defenses, we do like the Buffalo Bills today. They are pretty expensive for defensive purposes, but they have a favorable matchup. It's Tennessee, who really has struggled. The fantasy points have come for the Bills at times this season, but they also have had games where they give up a lot, so it's hard to know exactly what they're going to do, but they definitely look really good today. The Bengals, meanwhile, have a tough match against Cleveland, but I do think that the Bengals defense has some potential to score some fantasy points today. I also like the Rams defense today against Vegas, even though I do think Vegas is going to go their tight end a lot. They do have some potential for some touchdowns, but I think this is a high risk, high reward situation, but they're cheap and they're definitely worth a look there. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And